Hey everybody, I finished school today for the second time, my second time graduating from college, and soon I'm going to have to actually go into the real world. But until then, I'm going to spend my spare time doing videos, and I have a bunch of tags, some that I wanted to do, a couple that I was like too stupid. Like, I didn't think I would be able to come up with any good answers for, but then people tagged me, so I'm going to have to do them. But I still need some time to work on those. And I thought I'd start with something easy. And so I am doing the top and bottom books that I read in high school. This was started by the Incredibly Deadly Viper. Check down there for all of the relevant information. She actually did the top 15 books that she read in high school, but she left leeway to pick, whatever school and whatever number of books. And I am also going with high school because I read the most books then. I remember more about them, than earlier. I read more of a variety than in college. And I liked a lot more of them than I did my college books. And plus, I own all of my books I read in college too, but I do own the majority of these, not like my grade school ones. So I thought this would be the easiest. I went through my list, and I think I remember everything that I read. I still own everything with 2 or 3 exceptions. I ended up coming up with my top 8 and bottom 4. That was just random. Those 8 happened to be my favorites, and those 4 happen to be my least favorites, with quite a few in between as well. So let's just start with my favorites. For some reason, the majority of them happen to come from freshman year, which is really odd, but how that worked out. These are not in any particular order, just the order that I happen to compile them here, so grabbing from the top. The first one is Emma by Jane Austen. It should be no surprise that I am a huge Jane Austen fan. This was the second of her novels that I read. The first one was Pride and Prejudice, which I had read, I believe, between 8th and 9th grade, just for fun, because it was popular. This one was part of a summer reading list going into sophomore year. We always had, in my school, we had to read 2 summer reading books. One of them was mandatory for the whole school, and the rest you had a list of, I think it was maybe something around 5 or so books, or maybe up to 10, I don't know. You had to pick one of the list to be your second book. I chose Emma because I had really previously enjoyed Pride and Prejudice, so I wanted to read another Austen novel, and I ended up loving Emma a lot. The character I found a bit exasperating, but in a lovable way. And I just think it's really funny. I originally didn't like Mr. Knightley very much. I thought he'd be too naggy, but I absolutely adore him now. And over the years, through each time I reread Austen, I find just more new things to love and appreciate about her writing and her books that I didn't before. So I love this book even more now, but I did enjoy it then as well. The next book that is one of my favorites is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This one was also read sophomore year. This was the second time for me reading this book as well. I previously read it in, I believe, 8th grade, again, just on my own leisure time. I think I got it from the library. And when I originally read it, I don't know, I didn't quite understand a lot of what was going on, like what was hold and steal. It was a little bit over my head. I think I was too immature at that point. By the time I reread this, it kind of spoke to me at the time. In high school, I was dealing with severe depression, and I think none of my classmates really knew about that, so I wasn't really like Holden the way he acted, but I could understand what he was going through, even though our situations weren't the same at all, just kind of like how your mental state affects you. And my class, as is everybody, is really divided. I feel like this is really a love or hate it book. My class was just like that. Some people were like, what's Holden's deal? Is he schizo? I don't understand. And my teacher said out loud, and in my head, I totally agreed, he's depressed. And I'm like, obviously, don't any of you guys are teenagers. Don't any of you guys know what's going on here? I thought his observations on people were sometimes like humorously accurate, just like how good of an observer he is of others and how he called people phonies and everything. And while it was funny to read on the outside, like outwardly, once you really thought about it, it was kind of sad what was going on. So I loved and still love this book. The next book is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and this was actually sophomore year as well. Oh, you know what? Emma was read after sophomore year, going into junior year. Oops, I kind of forgot about that. But yes, this was my choice of summer reading book going into sophomore year. I totally messed that up. But The Bell Jar is another book about this one is about a depressed girl. So it's another one about a depressed person. The character is named Esther Greenwood, and she was in college, I believe, in the 60s. If you may or may not know, Sylvia Plath herself was depressed and did commit suicide. I think this was kind of based on her own life. The character in this, Esther, is trying to come up with a way to kill herself, and she goes through different stuff. I don't know, I haven't reread this book since then, so it's been about 10 years, but I remember really liking it, and also being really, like, I could really empathize, pardon me, with Esther and all of her things going on, messed up in her head and in her life. And so I guess this one I don't know if I would still love as much if I reread it now, because this one I have not reread. But as a depressed teen, this was another one that really spoke to me and that I could really relate to, and it kind of made, I don't know, reading these books about depressed people made me feel better about my own life as well. That sounds really bad, but it's true. The next book is Having Our Say by Sarah L. Delaney and A. Elizabeth Delaney with Amy Hill Hearth. And this was summer reading going into 9th grade. And this is a nonfiction book. It's a true story about two African American sisters. It says on here their first 100 years. At the time that this book was written, I think they were like 101 and 103. So they lived to be quite old, and it was just about their experiences growing up and dealing with the usual things of racism and sexism. And I also watched, there was a movie, I think it was a TV movie based on this, that I also ended up watching a couple of years later. Like, I caught it by chance on TV, and I thought it was really good, enjoyable, and informative. This one I have not reread either for some reason or other, so it's been quite a while. I don't remember all the details, but it was quite a good book. The next book is Pigs in Heaven by Barbara Kingsolver. This was my choice of summer reading for freshman year. And this is about a woman who has a daughter, a Native American adopted daughter, who was adopted under kind of like iffy circumstances, and apparently someone wants to take her daughter away, and so she goes on this road trip to try to like not have to give up her daughter Turtle and something like that. I haven't reread this book either, so the synopsis isn't that great, but I loved this book at the time, and still to this day I have not read the Poisonwood Bible, which is probably Kingsolver's most well-known novel, and I've heard good things about it. I wanted to read it right away back then, and then I still want to read it, and I never got a chance to. But yeah, I wish I remembered more about this book. I probably don't. My recollection probably isn't even accurate, but I thought it was really good. So convincing. Whatever. Let's just move on. Next book is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. This is another nonfiction one. Maya Angelou, as you probably know, is a famous poet, and she also wrote several books about her own life, and this was the first one. It talks about her early childhood into her teens, and growing up in poverty and dealing with all of this crazy stuff. My synopsis isn't going to do it any justice. I haven't reread this one either, but I thought it was really good, really moving, and very inspirational to see how she really kind of turned her life around. In this one, you don't quite get to actually see that, because it ends as she's still very young before she's famous or anything, but you know what's going to happen. And I never got around to reading any of her other books either, shame on me. The next book is The Chosen by Chaim Potok, and this is a book about two Jewish boys growing up or living in, I think, New York during World War II, and they're kind of from rival Jewish factions. There's Reuven, who is the main protagonist, who's from an Orthodox family, and then there's the other kid's named Danny, who's a Hasidic Jew and from a much stricter family, and their fathers and their father-son relationships play a big role in this. Reuven is very close with his dad, but Danny and his father are very distant, and their fathers have very different views on, their religion and the war and politics and all this kind of stuff. And so they become friends kind of in spite of their differences. And I really enjoyed this book, and there was a movie on this one too that I liked a lot. The last book is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and this is the only Charlotte Bronte book that I really like. It's her first published novel, her second completed novel. This was my second time also reading this. I had read it for pleasure probably a year or so before. Freshman year was when I read this, and I didn't really enjoy it the first time I read it, but this time reading it with the class, I think I was able to understand more, liked it a lot. And along with Emma, I felt like this book, each time I read it, I find more and more to just love about it. I really admire Jane's strength and how she's able to hold on to her morals as a character, despite, part of her wishing, to just do the easy thing. She has to follow what she believes in and do the right thing over what is easy. It sounds like it's from Harry Potter, but I love this book then, and I love it now as well. That is all of my favorites. Now on to my few least favorites here. I'm going to do the first couple ones really quick because I don't have them. First one is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I did have this one. I did own it. I have no idea what happened to it. I think if I had to say, I might have given it away to Salvation Army a few years ago by mistake, because I have been unable to find it anywhere in my house the past few years. This book was just really boring and hard to read, hard to get through. The whole class hated it, and that's all I'm going to say. The next one is The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I owned this one as well, but I loaned it to my aunt because it was like a really popular book at the time. And not only did I never get it back, I don't think she ever even read it. But this was a really hyped up book at the time, really controversial ideas. I didn't find any of the ideas controversial or new or whatever at all. I thought it was boring. I thought there was really no thrillingness to this supposed thriller at all. It fell really flat to me. Next one is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This book was just way too long and hard to read. And again, my whole class hated it. I think the teacher even hated it, which probably didn't help things in trying to get through it. And I remember there were some chapters that we would split up as a class to read. In certain groups would read certain chapters because they were some that were symbolic metaphors instead of actually about the characters. Some detailed passage about a turtle crossing the road is all I really remember. My memory's kind of fuzzy on this one. I'm not going to be rereading it anytime soon to try to check up on that and refresh my recollection. I don't think so. And the last one is Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. This is my summer reading choice going into my senior year, and I had high expectations for it because I was a Japanophile, loved Japan, and this sounded really good. But while I found all of the, cultural, historical aspects about it really fascinating and interesting, and I loved reading about them, though right now I kind of question their accuracy, the love story dragged the book down for me so much. He would not let it go, this stupid love story between whatever her name is, the geisha, and the chairman. It's like, I don't care about this. I don't want to read about that. It's not romantic. It's not touching. Just end that subplot right there. And so that wraps up my top 8 and bottom 4 books read in high school. I tag anybody else who wants to do this, whatever required books you want to do, however many you want. I don't care. See you guys later.